Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Call to order. It's Tuesday, October 29, 6 p.m. We'll call the joint board of Rockingham and Village Trustees together. Additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and/or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting.
I have none.
Anyone else?
Can we add that item that we didn't add to our last meeting?
You can propose it.
Okay. All right, I would like to add an item that the trustees need to handle. We should have done it at our last meeting on 66 Atkinson Street. Going forward with the order. We could ratify it at our next meeting. Okay?
Where would you like to put it?
Where would I like to put it? Oh, I don't know. You're the chair, so so you pick a spot. You won't take one. We put it at the bottom.
Put it as number 5.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's number 5. That's fine.
Number 5.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, need a motion to approve the minutes of October 1st and October 4th.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Second? Seconded. Motion made and seconded. Any, to accept the minutes of October 1st and October 4th. Any additions, corrections, deletions? Hearing none. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed would say nay. Motion carried. Public comments on items not on the agenda. 3 minutes per person. Hearing and seeing none. Down to the manager's report.
Okay, I have a few things. To let you know, we have the next rental property owners meeting. We're calling the landlord meeting, the rental property owners meetings. That's going to be the 20th of November. And Craig LaPointe of the U.S. District Attorney's Office is going to be there. And I'll tell you more about that later on in a presentation. This Saturday, there's a special select board meeting to start the budget. I'm going to remind you folks, half of you. The ski tow, the rope has been spliced, and so it's ready for the inspector. So we'll have use of that this year. The Rockingham Walpole Joint Select Board meeting is November 7th at 6:30 in Walpole, and the trustees are certainly invited to be there. And that's to discuss the new arch bridge, which they call the Church Street Bridge. And folks had questions on what the street light costs. It was $22 a month in summer and $45 during winter, just heads up. That's for one light.
Per light.
That's the one that's on our side.
Right, we only have one.
Our one.
We only have one, but yes. Halloween, there's a party at the firehouse on Thursday. They'll have a tent because of the rain, and they will be nice to young children as well as scary enough for old children, older children.
What time does that start at?
Party or a haunted house?
It's a haunted house.
Oh, okay, all right.
And what time?
Starts at 4.
Starts at 4 o'clock. Okay. So everybody knows, 4 p.m. Okay.
All right, and it's not a party. So be prepared. Just the PFAS situation you're probably familiar with the contamination. I just wanted you to know that our water department has collected the samples, and it costs $535 to have them analyzed. So just heads up on that, because that might come up tonight with the legislature. And then Pleasant Valley Road, the state completed the center line painting. We don't know if they're going to get to the center line in the square. They haven't yet, which is not a good sign. The School Street Atkinson, the sewer manhole was completed. The patch will be over the next 2 weeks. And then just today we found a propane leak, unfortunately, at the Waypoint Center. So the heat to the chamber is going to be shut off until that's repaired. take care of that. That's all I have.
But in regards to the patch on Access Street, in addition there too, I guess, what about this patch down here by the fire station? That looks like it's starting to sink.
It is, yes, we're aware of it, and that was done by a private company, that was not done by us, but we do regulate it, so we're working with the folks who are responsible for that, and we'll either let them do something this year on part of it, because it's the part that's in the road that's the problem. The part on the side is okay, or fix it next year with a bigger repair.
So, speaking of patches, what about the one in front of 7-Eleven? Will that get done in the same time frame as the school street access street?
That's in the next couple weeks, Gary might know.
I haven't heard any, last time I heard about that was they couldn't find anybody yet to do the paving, because the paving's backed up, all the paving companies around are backed up.
I expect it would get done at the same time as we do School Street, because we'll have someone here to do it.
Anyone else?
What center lines did you say were painted?
On,
Pleasant Valley.
Pleasant Valley. Not yet, the one, town staff, painted the, line for them to follow, but they put the
This
stake
one's
to
not
it.
gonna get done?
I don't know.
What about by the Saxon's River Post Office?
I don't, if it's not there already,
Where there's not,
yeah, I thought
it's
they
like,
may have.
where there's a little yellow reflector, go in the other lane so you don't get a parked car. Just seems dangerous.
There's other
I
issues
can
besides
just say on that guy, Tom, the reflectors, them have been moved over the right amount of width from the parked cars, and you can actually take a dump with a dump truck and go through there without touching the car or touching the reflectors. It has been
Well,
measured out.
I gathered that. That's why it was moved, but you're going in the other lane of traffic, so we should have probably a clearly visible marking, especially for the upcoming winter months.
Yeah. Okay.
No parking for
They're working on the parking there, I guess.
Well, and then the issue of the post office, the sidewalk in front of the post office is still an issue.
Yeah.
Right now, it's working okay with the reflectors.
Right where the line is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on to the agenda. State legislative presentations, looks like there's only one.
Well, we're still happy to have the one.
We'll take what we can get.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No difference in that.
Yeah.
You would have said that if it was Becca or Matt.
Yeah, and the other ones I did correspond with them, and they do know at least of the three things that I suggested that you ask them to, or let them know of our concerns, and which include the cannabis legislation, the fire inspectors, rental housing regulation. I can go over any of those if you like, or insurances in the
You
packet.
want to lead off on this?
How do you want to do this? Do you want to just ask questions? Do you want me to answer some of the things that I could talk to the cannabis legislation? Because I was an author of that, and we've passed it.
You and I have had discussions several times about this whole situation, so, but
But if you want to just ask questions,
I have some things lined out on this note that I from VLCT. Do you have that?
Yep, I have that.
Okay. Something in there on matters of agreement that says may only condition local approvals with ordinance regulating signage and nuisances. Kind of let us know. I mean, I think that one time we had a attempt, maybe 10 years ago, to have a retail marijuana move in, and for some reason their zoning superseded, so they couldn't put it in.
It's too close to a school.
Two schools and different other government buildings are so many feet, had to be so many feet away. And so how do we stand as far as that goes?
Well, the way the legislation was written is that you can issue a permit with compliance with any bylaws from the 24 VSA 4414, or ordinances regulating signs or public nuisances.
But it also go down no further, it says more relevant provisions of local planning and zoning criteria were ignored. Why do they not allow us to, but through zoning to, I mean, I know this, we're reading it over the last 6 months of this thing, several towns have come out and really opposed having anything to do with cannabis in their town. But now is the state telling us that we can't
No,
prohibit that?
no, the intent of this was to say that if you want to prohibit, first of all, there are 5 different types of licenses. There's grow facility, wholesale, which means just that, production, retail, and testing. So you can have a townwide vote to prohibit any one of those or all of them if you want. You can, that's up to how you want to do it. If you wanted to say, we're not going to have anything in our town at all, no grow, no retail, no testing facility, nothing, you can do that. It has to go to the voters, so it has to be done at a vote. It can't be done by the legislative body. So it has to go to the voters, and then the intent of that language was to say that if the voters have not prohibited, you cannot essentially prohibit it by zoning it out. It's up to the voters to say whether they want it to be prohibited or not. So you can't then have a vote and everybody in town says, yes, we're okay, we want to have it. And then you can't turn around and write your zoning to prohibit it. That's the intent, and if that isn't clear, then we will clarify that language. But it doesn't say you can't, that they still have to abide by your zoning. So if you have a zone, for example, that doesn't allow retail establishments, then you can't have a marijuana retail establishment in that area. It's to be treated as every other establishment in those categories.
So as of now, we cannot rewrite zoning bylaws to prohibit, is what you're saying. As of now, we cannot do that. If they aren't already there, we're not allowed to establish new zoning bylaws that
Well, you would
have
I don't know what you would do. You would have your zoning bylaws that said we're not going to let any farmer grow. We're not going to let any retail. No, it has to be done by if you're going to prohibit it, it has to be done by a townwide vote. And you could, in your case, I would assume you can have a separate vote for the village and for the town if that's the way you chose to do it.
So how did that affect from years ago? I think maybe probably about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, there was some ordinances throughout the state about prohibiting dispensaries.
Well, it was the same thing in the dispensary. With the dispensaries, you had to have a vote to not allow them, and some towns did.
Yeah.
I think Dover has. I don't know who else has. Ludlow, they've prohibited. But you could have a vote right now if you wanted to. I mean, you could have a vote anytime you want of the public.
Did Rockingham?
There was something, I believe we
That's what I thought.
passed an
You guys
ordinance
did
at that
3 years
time.
ago.
But if that was for dispensaries, it doesn't relate to this. You'd have to have a separate vote.
It was
now.
dispensary.
Yeah, and I think that the discussion, I seem to remember something about anything downtown would be too close to where the school is.
Right. I recall the same thing. I
Yeah.
just don't remember exactly.
That isn't in here now at all. If you have that in your zoning, and I don't know how you would, if you have a tobacco shop, or a liquor store, or someplace that sells alcohol, you probably have to treat it in
I know,
the same way.
Tom was chairman of the board at the time, but let me ask, the police chief is here. Do you recollect anything, chief?
1,000 feet from any school.
But that's yours?
That was the village ordinance that was signed. It was 1,000 feet from any school. We followed federal regulation related to the dispensaries of marijuana. So they pretty much put anything in the village out of the 1,000-foot area. So
and you, if that's for dispensaries, but, and I'm surprised to hear that there are any federal regulations at all, because it's illegal federally. So I don't,
It wasn't federal regulation, it was federal, it was, we adopted based on federal guidelines related to dispensaries near schools. It was something related to dispensaries near schools. We adopted that, and it was 1,000 feet. Couldn't be 1,000 feet from any school, so it pretty much precluded anything in the village of Bellas Falls.
which is where, if you wanted a retail store, is where you would want it, is in the village of Bellas Falls. You wouldn't want it
Yeah.
out in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so that's the village ordinance. The town has an ordinance prohibiting marijuana dispensaries, period. It says marijuana dispensaries as defined in 18 VSA Chapter 86 are prohibited within the town of Rockingham, Vermont. This prohibition shall include dispensaries that distribute and/or cultivate marijuana. So that's, let's see, it says it was adopted in,
08, 09?
No, it's pretty recently.
well, it doesn't, October 3rd, 2013, adopted the following town ordinance.
But I believe you would now have to have another vote because these are not dispensaries, and there are 5 different ones. So you could have, you could do it any way you wanted to word it. You could say all are prohibited, or you could separate them and say, we're going to prohibit. Personally, I don't know that you want to prohibit them. I think your small farmers are going to want to have some ability to grow the product and sell it, and the retail establishments are going to generate money. So, but that's up to you and how the town votes.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying, Jeanette, is that all of the ordinance we currently have are not legal to have because we have to have an actual vote of the community in order to have any prohibitions.
No, that's
For
for
the-
dispensaries.
That's dispensaries. These are not, dispensaries are medical. The dispensaries are for medical use. And this is not, this is for, and we don't call it recreational use anymore because it makes it sound like it's on the playground. We call it adult use. So this is for legal over 21 adult use.
So the Cannabis Control Board, is that a state board? Because it says here municipalities have no representation on it.
There are 5 members on the cannabis, well, you will have your own, if you choose to allow anything in Rockingham or the village, then you would have your own, like you have your liquor control board, which I think is you, right? So you would have either a separate one or it would be you. There are 5 members of the cannabis. I printed out the bill. It's very long.
Double spaced and all that, market text, yeah, it's very.
No, but I printed it out just so that I could answer some questions. And the 3, I'm trying to find the board here. You're right, there is no specific representation from towns. There is someone appointed by the Ask me another question while I find this.
What's the revenue split now between the state and the town or whatever? The only reason to say that is because right now the only policing that is available in Rockingham for Village of Bellas Falls is the Village PD, and that's a subject of discussion currently whether they want to fund it, whatever, that's an issue they got to deal with, but we have no policing in Rockingham, so how's the enforcement going to take place? Yeah, the state police are going to come? I doubt it. Come on, Gary, you don't come unless there's a dead body somewhere.
No, that's not true.
I beg the difference.
Not true at all.
Oh, see that sentence that says
So-
municipalities must be guaranteed shares of licensing fees for marijuana establishments.
Yeah, but what's the share? I mean,
That's
As
the share.
of now, that isn't in here, as of now, what you can do is you can have a 2% local options tax on any sales.
Oh, so we have to pass a local options tax.
Just on that.
Just on that.
It can be a separate, the regular local options tax is 1%, and you have to get that approved, but you can do the 2% just on marijuana products if you want.
that,
How do we know people aren't illegally doing it now?
They are.
they are.
Well,
All
that,
you had to do was watch 60 Minutes last night. California's, not the black market, so, they're arresting them every day out there.
yeah,
They're doing the same thing, farmers are growing it illegally, and they go in, they raid it one day, the next day it's right back in operation again. So there's an enforcement issue that's gotta come up, and I'm looking at Mr. Lake in the background, he's probably trying to avoid me to ask him, but what's your opinion on enforcement of this stuff, Ron? I mean, you haven't got a helicopter yet, so I mean.
We're not getting a helicopter.
Yeah, we need more drones.
So Jeanette, is there anything in the Senate going for tax proposals for this? If it happens in our jurisdiction?
I mean, you got fire coverage, I mean.
Point of order.
Point of
order.
Too many people.
Can we have some decorum here? Like, we have 4 people talking at once.
You had a question?
Yeah, anything going on in the Senate for legislation that may be upcoming for taxing and making revenue with funding or generating
On
funds?
this,
Yeah,
we've already passed this bill out of the Senate.
okay.
This is actually the 5th time we've passed it out of the Senate. And we're hoping that the House will do something this year. When we did it originally, we had a split and we had where the money should go. And we decided that we shouldn't be doing that. That should be our appropriations committee. And whether they give it to law enforcement or to rehab facilities or to education and prevention or where it goes, that the need should be put in there with all the other needs of the state. So there isn't anything right now. I think that there can be probably a split with the licensing fees, that's the most likely thing that would happen. That is the most likely. And I just found who's on the board on page 214. Okay, so one member is appointed by the governor who has a background in consumer education. Remember, this board is going to be doing all the detailed work, so we need people with different backgrounds and different expertise. So the governor appoints someone who has a background in consumer protection. The Senate Committee on Committees appoints someone with a background in agriculture, horticulture, or plant science. It was hard to say somebody who knows how to grow without saying it that way. Member appointed by the Speaker who has a background in systemic social justice and equity issues. Member appointed by the Treasurer who have a background in business management for corporate structures, and by the Attorney General who has a background in legal or regulatory compliance. So so those are the people that are going to, like the liquor board, they're the people that are going to set the rules and do all the rulemaking and decide what these are and whether they should have tiers. Should we start with unlimited number of small growers? And because we want to keep this, our whole purpose in this was to try and keep it from becoming a monopoly or from having the big corporations come in. We wanted to keep it small so that our farmers and local people would benefit by it. So they will do that rulemaking. They're going to have to work with municipal people and law enforcement, and I mean, they're not going to be making these rules in a vacuum. So, but you're right, there is no one specifically representing municipalities, although any one of these people could end up being somebody who represents a municipality.
Anyone else have any questions?
Just follow up, you'll get the sample resolution from the LCT that'll give you as much flexibility as possible. That's how they're crafting their recommendations. So that'll happen in the next couple months, that those will be distributed and you can consider that.
Anyone else have any questions before we move on?
I have one question. So what happens in the meantime, since there's no legal ordinance that we have that's binding, if someone came and wanted to implement one of those 5 options?
Well, first of all, they can't.
They can't? Okay.
Well, I can tell you that one of the things that Gwen said in her memo here was about the timing and how municipalities needed a lot more time in order to adopt it. And I did a timeline from the bill, assuming that it passed last in May of 2019. There would be no retail establishments until April of '21. So if we assume that it might pass this year, there would be nothing until '22. So the way the rulemaking would start next year, and then first there would be applications and issuance of licenses for cultivators, because you can't have a retail outlet if you don't have anything to sell. So the cultivators would come first, and then a year later, the retail establishments. So there's not going to be any, believe me, this is not rushing.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so if anybody decides now that they want to set up something here, they would be illegal.
Anyone else?
And I would.
Can we bring up the other issues?
Yeah, sure. I did not know the dire straits of the fire inspector.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. And I did see that we are adding 5 positions statewide for fire inspectors. Whether that'll help down here, I don't know. But it is something that I chair government operations, and one of the things we deal with is licensing and professional regulation, and also municipalities and law enforcement. So we will take that up in our committee as soon as we get back to try and figure out.
Because there's a class going on now, we tried to register 3 people, we're only allowed 1, and it's a really important class, and health inspector.
Why could you only get 1?
Because they told us they would only,
It was full.
right, I mean, we had, well, but they kicked us out.
Is it at the fire academy
It was full, they had a lot of applications, so there was 3 from this municipality, so they had to let everyone from wherever rather than 3 from one location.
But we have 2 municipalities, was my argument, so we should have gotten at least 2 people, because our health officer wasn't able to go.
Well,
But our deputy health officer is right behind you, he's taking the training. But we really need someone outside of the village who's able to perform those inspections.
well, we need to have more classes for both at the fire academy and at the police academy, and we're working on that, and also on alternative ways to become certified.
Yes, and
Because-
we might do the online one.
There are different ways of becoming certified, both for law enforcement and for fire inspectors.
Voting on it.
How many fire inspectors are there now on the state level? 1.
I
You said
don't,
they're adding 5? That's a lot, right?
I'm trying to think of where I just read that they were.
You know,
adding fire.
There's 3, I'm not sure how many are in the state, but there's 3 in my class right now.
No, but right now, state fire inspectors, right now, currently in the state of Vermont.
I don't know how many are in the state of Vermont,
I-
but I know there's 3 in my class right now.
Is 3 where?
In my class that
Oh,
I'm taking.
But it's the only class in the state.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there's 3 in the Springfield office, because we've had Steve Dumont for smaller commercial operations, Langdon for industrial ones,
Brian Johnson.
and Brian Johnson, yeah, so we have 3 that,
Okay.
but they're booked. I mean, that's for Windsor County, Wyndham County. It could be 100 different people needing them to come and do inspections.
And we've had businesses not be able to open because of it, so it's an
Yeah.
economic development issue.
Oh.
It's safety, but it's
Yeah.
economic development.
Yeah, well, we will, I did not realize that it was as bad as it was.
Yeah, so thank you.
So, but we will definitely take that up with him.
Great. And then our other issue is the rental house regulation, or rental housing
Just reading that, yeah.
regulation. And they are talking about adding 5 inspectors there, so that might be also what you're thinking about. But part of, there's a proposal that would take rental housing inspection away from municipalities that do not have code enforcement. And we don't technically have code enforcement right now. But we are ramping up our rental program, as you'll see if you hang out.
Yeah,
So
I
that's alarming to us. So nothing is happening immediately, but we just want you to be aware of that so you can protect our interests.
Well, this, I voted against this bill, I think, at least 2 or 3 times, that would create a statewide rental registry. And the reason I've been told that we need that is because after Irene, we had such a hard time finding places for people to say, well, a statewide registry isn't going to help that at all because it doesn't tell you where vacancies are. And if you really want to know where vacancies are, you go to your town clerk or people in your town. So, but it seems that the real reason is to establish a statewide inspection system. And I am not sure that that is the direction we should be going, but it will come up again this year, I know it will.
Right.
So.
Mark, you had a question?
Well, it's to the last topic, so if there was any discussion on this. I had a question, Chief. You said there's 3 fire inspectors in your fire inspector class? I don't understand.
We can talk about it later.
Yeah. Well, it's good public information for
We may-
people from this community that couldn't get in that class.
I understand that's a separate issue than what we're talking about here. Class size is not what we're discussing here.
Fire inspection is on the agenda here.
And
We just
asking for
discussed
more
it.
frequent classes, right? We didn't include that now.
Right, and it hasn't been one for a couple of years, I think, right? We've been waiting, right, for the fire inspector 1, and then we still want the fire inspector 2. It'd be nice if there was a fire inspector 1 every year. I mean, that would be really nice.
So I don't know.
Yeah, so we're just,
It's,
letting you know.
but we will check it out and figure out why. I know with the police academy, one of the problems is instructors, because the instructors come from, we don't really pay instructors. They come from, they're loaned to us by the sheriff's office or large municipalities or the state police. That's where the instructors come from. And, I mean, there are a couple that are permanent and are there, but, so that's a problem in offering more classes, but we're working on that also. And also alternative ways of becoming licensed and certified. It doesn't, we don't have to have everybody doing it in exactly the same way. We have a lot of doctors in this state that got their degrees, some of them at University of Vermont, some of them at University of Minnesota, some of them at Harvard Medical School, and yet they all perform their duties. So we don't need every fire inspector and every police officer to have gone through the exact same item. But there is some disagreement with that from some people, so.
Yep.
Yeah, well, to deal with that, I mean, remote classes could definitely be done. It's the 21st century. We talk about that in this high school setting all the time where I'm a director. And there's an opportunity to take advantage of that so that a lot more people can get the class at the same time. But my question went back to the cannabis legislation. I'm not sure, it hasn't been mentioned. I haven't seen anything in writing, but every person who dispenses or serves liquor has to go through a class from the Vermont Department of Liquor Control. I see nothing or anything so far suggested that people who dispense marijuana in any way, shape, or form have to go through any classes because it's a regulated substance, just like liquor. There should be the same type of classes required.
Yeah, I think that it's it's in here, but it doesn't say, the rulemaking will be done by the board.
The board.
Yeah, because you can't, when you're writing legislation, I mean, it's already, 100 pages or something. And if you tried to put in every detail, first of all, we'd never get anything done. And so you have to then do the broad outline, and then you have the rulemaking that actually fills in the details. And that will be in there because it does say they have to have education classes.
Okay,
and they
so
have
it
to-
will be addressed.
Yeah, it will be addressed. Both for growers around use of pesticides and stuff like that, and for retail people. And it is very clear in here that no one under 21 could go into a retail outlet. It isn't like a liquor store you could have your kids walking in behind you, but not this. Under 21, it's just, yeah.
Anyone else have any questions on those items?
Can I just make a suggestion that on all three of these, you just keep the pressure on, because when we get up there, the time goes so fast, and we need to make sure that we're actually dealing with all three of these. And two of them will be in the fire inspectors will be in my government operations committee, and the marijuana will be in the judiciary committee, which I also serve on. The housing issue will not be in any committee I serve on, but I'll make sure, and Becca does serve on that committee.
Okay, so I'll stay in touch with her.
Yeah.
I'd just like to add another item. These are all very important issues on a kind of a micro basis. On a macro basis, there was an excellent article, commentary in the Brattleboro Reformer today from, I guess, a former representative.
Oh yeah, Don Turner.
Don Turner, that talks about our $4.5 billion pension fund deficit for the state of Vermont. The recent downgrades in our credit rating that's directly related to this. This isn't a new issue, but it would seem to me from the health of the state, while all of these other items, cannabis and fire inspectors and all that are important, I think from the health of our state, the legislator ought to get active and do something about this, stop this foolishness, and adopt a current, modern pension plan for state employees and teaching people.
So we, the state employees are also in the purview of my committee. And we have spent, since I've been there, we've spent a lot of time on retirement issues and how we deal with that. And we are catching up with the unfunded part of it. Last 2 years ago, I think it was, we had a surplus, and we suggested putting the entire surplus to catch up into the retirement system. But the governor did not want to do that. He wanted to offset property taxes. In the long run, I think that our plan was a better plan because it really would have saved a ton of money over a period of time. So the chair of our appropriations committee is on top of this, and she every year is promoting now, putting more money into so that we can catch up.
Well, I think that's dealing with the unfunded.
I know, but
I'm talking about the perpetuation of the defined benefit plan.
I know. So we spent a lot of time looking at states and companies and who had gone from defined benefit to defined contribution. And one of the things that we found with almost every state that had gone from defined benefits to defined contributions was that they were unhappy with the results. Because what happens is that they were spending more money in the long run on other benefits for the people because people lost their their savings, or in 2008, with the crash, people lost it. So then the state has to come in and provide, there's more Medicaid, more food stamps, more. So most of the states that we found that had made that switch were beginning to think about switching back.
That's not true. The people are affected are not on welfare. These are the teachers and the state employees. So it's not, this is the group that's affected.
Yeah.
And they're among the most well-compensated people in our state. That didn't used to be the case 50 years ago, but that is the case now. And the issue is not to take away benefits that are already accrued. It's to make it applicable for new employees.
Yes.
And it makes sense. Corporate America went to defined contribution plans in the 80s. Okay? I haven't seen a single corporation revert back. So,
well, they don't have to, because when their employees can't live on what the defined contribution allows them to come back in retirement, they fall back on the largesse of the state. Not the corporation itself doesn't give them food stamps or Medicaid or anything. It's the state that does that. So in states where major corporations have made that move, they are beginning to see the results of people now needing more safety nets. It's just, we have spent a lot of time looking at this, and our treasurer is very committed to continuing with defined benefits, and
that's the problem.
Well, I put a lot of faith in her. She's one smart person, and we did very well in 2008 when other places didn't do as well. So anyway, it is something that we talk about a lot. And I know Don very well, so.
Well,
yeah.
Pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else have anything? Okay, let's move on to the housing discussion.
Thanks for being. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome to stay.
You're welcome to have my packet. Okay, all my papers.
All right, great. And that includes the bill, right?
The bill is in there. They got kind of messed up because I was trying to have to be recorded. Yeah, you'll have to reorganize it, but if anybody wants to see.
No worries.
Still going. And just so that you know, I don't know if any of you watched the calendar. The legislative website is really easy to use. I don't know if any of you had used it or not, but it lists the agendas for every committee for every week. And if you send something up as testimony, or if you come in and give testimony, it's posted on the website. So everything is there. Oh, that isn't our website, but ours is almost that good. But anyway, it's easy to use, so you can keep up with what's happening out there. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Nice work on that, thank you.
Thanks.
We've been working that for a while, I remember.
Yes.
I'm not gonna watch
Yeah.
it.
Oh.
Do we
Okay.
know why the others didn't come? Becca and...
A couple of, Becca had a meeting in St. Albans. I'm sorry,
Well, I think, did Becca have a meeting someplace else? Because I know she also was completely responsible for childcare, because her spouse is someplace in Arizona or someplace.
yeah, she did just something in St. Albans.
Okay.
That she had to go to.
And
Matthew,
Matt-
I thought was going to be here. But Carolyn has to watch her kids, is what's happening.
Kids, you're all
Or grandchildren, so,
Yeah.
offspring, okay. But they were really helpful when we had the issue with the taxes, and they've been very responsive. And I think I was saying before you were, Rebecca has been here a lot. Okay, so this is really just an update, the housing discussion of what we presented in February. And so what I did was just highlight what has changed from that report. So the units are basically the same, so we'll go to the second page. And I just want to point out this housing challenges and the overall goals still exist. The problem is many of the 3 to 4 family buildings are not code compliant. People are living in substandard housing. Some of the renters do not take care of the property. Some of the historic homes are not being maintained. I mean, we all know examples of that. We have limited funds to address housing. Staff have limited resources and primarily react to complaints. We possess inadequate regulatory tools. We're working on that actually. And the state has minimal resources. And the overall goals are still the same. Ensure residents have safe, affordable housing. Ensure that landlords are financially able to provide safe, affordable housing, because landlords do want to, by and large. Try to reduce staff costs and time required. Encourage preventative maintenance so that we save resources and the structures. Facilitate renters becoming homeowners, and that's something actually that came up in our first rental property owner meeting. Some of the landlords had tenants who they knew would be really good property owners, but they just didn't have the down payment. Provide a greater range of affordable housing options and home businesses, and preserve the historic character. It's really important. So we had some immediate action steps that we identified. The yellow again shows you what we did with the reserve fund. The reserve fund was established, $50,000 at town meeting. What we need to do now is establish a mechanism, figure out how to use that money in an effective and fair way. Possibly do something similar to what we do with the revolving loan fund, establish a committee to review applications and advise the select board. In the meantime, we can apply for a grant from USDA. Once we get the nuisance ordinance through, then we can apply for a grant from USDA to essentially double our money, because the $50,000 can be used as a match, and $50,000 is the highest grant award. So I think that would be a logical thing to do. So then on the deputy health officer, we proposed that the town budget include 10% of the fire chief's time. That did happen. It was funded in the budget, and Sean McGinnis was appointed in September. He has been accompanying health officer on inspections, and he's actually the lucky one who gets to go to the Fire Inspector 1 training. So having the co-health and fire ability is really, really valuable, and that's how we can address problems just directly and quickly, is by using those two mechanisms. Yeah, I said in here that folks got bumped. Then the landlord-tenant group, which I'm trying to call the rental property owners group, it's just a better name. The group met twice in August and September. The lunchtime meeting time was preferred. We had a good turnout. The next meeting is on the 20th of November, and there'll be a presentation by the U.S. Attorney's Office on effective leases and what we think will be really helpful, the role of the landlord in combating drug trafficking. Landlords obviously don't generally want that on their property, and that's been a concern of the board since the beginning, is reducing that. And what we found is there are several part-time landlords. There are people whose main business is not renting property, but it's kind of a sideline. And a number of them didn't use leases because they thought that without a lease, they could more easily deal with a problem tenant, which is exactly not the case. So, we have a sample lease, a model lease that we're providing to the folks. And then the presenter will obviously be able to tell them how to use that lease and how to enforce it, which will really be valuable. And Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust received a grant, a small grant, to determine what kind of financial incentives would work for private property, not publicly assisted property, but private property owners to improve their buildings. The state recently had a incentive process, or the state wants to help private property owners, not just the big nonprofits. And so Wyndham Windsor has a grant to find out what mechanisms will work. And then once they finish that study, there will likely be funding available to actually provide the service. So they will be at the meeting to start that process and ask the property owners, what would help out. We did use postcards again as a mailing. Well, hopefully we can do it by email only next time. We're advertising on the website, but we're getting a lot of good responses from folks on that group. And then the medium-term action steps. The first one was the blighted property ordinance, which is now called the nuisance ordinance, and as you know, we've been working on it for months. Deb can speak to this, obviously. It's undergone a lot of amendments. The purpose of it is to have a mechanism to strongly encourage property owners to maintain their properties. And obviously, 66 Atkinson is the best example of why we need this. It's just about done. The attorney just reviewed it, so it should be ready for both boards to look at. One of the decisions that's going to need to be made is how to coordinate the village and the town, or both villages and the town, but that'll be a decision for you. We're going to present it in a way that it can be town-wide, and the villages can have whichever amount of authority either the town wants to share or the villages can have that authority. So that'll be soon. So then, and the ordinance is, once we have it, then we can apply for the USDA grants. We'll have a much better shot at getting the USDA grants. And then the longer term action, we're talking about the Planning Commission, the review of the town plan, and they just mentioned here the recent zoning amendments. Those had revisions designed to spur reinvestment of housing. And then just another shout out to the USDA Housing Preservation Grant at the end, because there are a lot of folks who could be owners but who are currently renters. So getting them over that hump would really be good. So then we have included some other information in this set of slides. It was done by Brandy Saxton, who's the
place sense person. She assisted the planning commission in two chapters in the town plan.
Right, and there's some really good information in this. So that's the fair housing law. So I'm just sharing this with you so that you're aware of it. So if we can go to the next slide, it's just the number of housing, which this is what you had in the stuff that our staff put together, and then rental housing, and then there's one in particular that I want to show you. It's on page 6. And let's just go one more, and we can go back to any of these, but sometimes there's a perception that Bellows Falls has more subsidized housing as a percentage than other towns, and we do have more than, in this example, or I'm sorry, I should say Rockingham, not Bellows Falls. Hartford is 15% subsidized, but comparing Rockingham is 18% subsidized, Brattleboro is 24%, and Springfield's 30% subsidized housing. So I think it's just helpful for you to know those amounts.
In fairness, there's other important numbers that should be mentioned, like the percentage, rather than just comparing it to something that makes it look better.
No, that is percentage.
I know. If you go back, the number of units, the percentage of rental units in Bellows Falls, that's important.
Right, that's the total of the ones in Bellows Falls that are rental units. Right, there's all sorts. I mean, we can look at the data in lots of different ways.
If you compare it to those, it makes it look like there's not as many, I guess, is why you stopped on that slide?
Yes. Well, because what I hear from people often is, we have more subsidized housing than Brattleboro, but I hear that. And according to this anyway, that's not the case on a percentage basis, or even a numbers basis.
Maybe have
But there's
to
question.
population.
Point of order.
Yes,
If you look at the sheet before that one, is that the one, no, the one that showed the 15, 30, 24, and 18?
The one you started with, Wendy, down there. There you go.
Right there.
Okay, now the one before that,
the one-
the
Just
slide before that,
Yeah. that's-
which had the number of units.
right.
Okay. The chart on the second page deals with the first two categories, which is the Canal House, the Riverview, the Windsor Wyndham type of things. I think that what this shows, this 18%, 24%, is that there's more activity by agencies or Windsor Wyndham type trust things going on in Brattleboro and Springfield than there are in Dulles Falls. We'd obviously like to encourage more of those types of support. The third category on the previous one is the tenant-based rental assistance. That's the one that I've been kind of interested in, because it would appear that I'm assuming that tenant-based rental assistants are private owners of rental properties that have tenants that are on a subsidy.
Right, Section 8, yes.
And it's only 54 units, which is if you look at Bellows Falls with 725 units and, let's say 100 of them or 120 of them are in the first two categories. So, maybe there's 600 tenant-owned or private owner-owned tenants, and only 54, according to this, are on subsidies, which is hard to believe when you look at our demographics.
Right.
But it's true. I've been asking the listers since 2012 when I first got on the board, and it continues to never get much larger. People think there's a lot of people on Section 8, but that's not the reality here.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get on Section 8, that's what
Yeah.
waiting list.
Your house has to qualify too, so not just the tenant, but the house as well.
Yeah, it's just very interesting data, I thought, and I just wanted to share it. And then there's some neat, interesting
But I
math,
think,
too.
I think the next page, which is it showed the 1824.
Yeah.
I think your premise is wrong, okay? In other words, I would say that Brattleboro or take Windsor Wyndham Housing, if you looked at their numbers in Springfield, Rockingham, and Brattleboro, I think you'd see that they've been more active in these other towns. So I think that that might not be a great example of just where the opportunities are or where the people that sponsor these programs are from. I don't know.
Well, they took over Rockingham Area Land Trust.
Yes, they did.
So that was what was here before.
Right.
But they're very interested in doing more here. I mean, they want to do more here. And they want to do housing or housing purchase programs here too, not just rental. And then there's some interesting maps, which kind of take a while to go through, but if you, a lot of this actually is not what was expected. The very last slide where it's values, this would actually be a good segue into the next conversation. The residential values per acre. you can see the areas of very high value in the village. 500,000 or more per acre. Wait,
How much?
that one's different than mine. Per acre. Per acre.
No,
No,
per acre, it's the next one.
no,
There you go.
they're
I
there.
got a bunch up there.
No. It's on a per acre, it's true. I mean, that's,
Well, yeah, that makes sense, because my lot is only a quarter acre, so you would combine the 4 houses around me to get 1 acre.
Right, exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Well, and we're 1/10 of an acre.
So that makes sense.
On Green Street, those houses are all 1/10 of an
Yeah.
acre.
yeah, so it's 1 million or more are the brown areas. 1 million or more per
Mine's
acre.
1/10 of an acre, so you get 10.
Yeah, but nobody owns an acre lot, so it's, I mean, how?
Well, it's meaningful when you think about property tax, no, when you think about property tax value and its income, this shows you that we have valuable property.
Why is
Right.
my house darker than?
Property.
What did I
It's worth more.
What did you say, property?
do? Not according to the assessed
Yeah,
value.
yeah, this shows you the potential for property tax revenue, basically. I mean, that's one way of looking at it.
This is kind of a skewed number though, because this is not residential value per acre, this is per acre with a household.
Yeah.
How
Because
many?
it's not
per
a,
acre with the property.
no, with a house site on it.
Sure.
Because if it was a per acre, that would be totally different.
Right, it's
We
not
don't-
land
yeah,
only,
right.
yeah, it doesn't say land only.
So
like
the
this.
value in itself is not, but it's not an equitable figure per acre because because of the disparity of the house.
But it shows, no, it's an important number because it shows you, this is something that we could use if we were comparing Bellas Falls to other communities, for
Right,
example.
no, but it,
But,
They're using a grand list figure for the houses drawn
Right,
for
the
property.
so this is improved property value. But it's pretty mind-blowing to know that there's areas where it's more than $1 million an acre, improved properties. I'm not talking vacant land, improved
Right.
properties, $1 million an acre.
the
That's just not
heading-
something that you hear.
the heading should be different. It should be residential house site values per acre.
They could change that, yeah.
Be accurate because that's what they're depicting.
Well, it's residential is the issue, not, as opposed to commercial.
No, I agree with residential, but it's
Yeah.
factored in house site as well as land.
Sure.
In the equation, it doesn't state.
Sure.
But
Yeah, we could add that, but, yeah, I mean, the intent was not to be misleading, the intent was to provide information, but I think it's pretty interesting.
Does this live on their website?
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
find it here.
It's from the planning commission.
Well, no, I'm looking at the, is it in the
Well, it
packet?
wouldn't be on our packet.
It's in the packet?
Yeah, it's just
It's
sideways.
it's in white. It's not uncolored.
Right, because we didn't want all the blue to
Yeah.
work.
But then I can't see the map.
We can get you this, not a problem,
All right.
yeah.
I'm an analytical, so.
Oh, yeah, no, it's super interesting, so go for it.
I'm sorry, I might have been reading.
Oh, the map
Did
is.
you
in
explain the residential property value one without the per acre map?
The residential property values.
Confusing.
Right.
That's confusing.
That may be, I wish Chuck were here, I don't know if Deb would know. This may be without the improvements, but I doubt it. I mean, there's really no point in doing values of land only because it is improved.
Right, it does include whatever, the
Well,
entire value of the property.
There's a lot of that, there's no property on.
Oh, I know
just
it.
land.
No,
So
no,
The
this
question
is-
is, what is this?
No, these are actual parcels. That's what it is. These are parcels, not per acre.
Right, because my house is that big brown spot there, and I know that that's only a quarter of an acre.
Yeah,
So
these
it
are
is
parcels.
separated. It's by
So
parcel.
those of you who
Residential
own
property
property here can
Yes,
find
this
the
one right
parcels.
here. Residential values for the one before.
Not that acre,
One before.
which you're
This one.
saying some of the land words where there's no.
It's not in acres, it's by property.
It's the parcel. It's
Parcel.
the parcel.
Can I, so
That's-
in
That
other
doesn't make
words,
sense.
can I ask a question about trying to figure?
Go ahead.
So in other words, if a certain house has a different color, it's because their property value is more, even though they might be less of an acreage, but it's part of.
Right, this is by
On
parcel,
this
not by
one,
acre.
yes.
right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so you should be able to find your house.
Oh, I know where my house is, I told you, it's
Yeah,
not
but-
one in the
Some of that, there's no house on the property.
So I would expect
Okay.
those would be the least expensive.
Yeah,
ones.
the
They'll be
empty
lower
lot
values.
shows the less than 85.
I noticed Jefferson,
Yeah, my house isn't worth over $500,000, so I don't understand that, but, okay.
752 a million.
Now?
Not now, that's how much it cost me to build it.
Yeah, we
Well, that
all,
was
we all know where your house
2017.
is.
No, but the empty lot
I'm impressed.
is showing as that, which keys to that one.
Right, exactly, less than 80,000. Is that, wait, did you find a piece that that totally does throw you off, or?
Yeah, several, but either way.
I believe that she might have gotten this from VLCT and their mapping systems, because she used a number of different places to
Right.
pick up this material.
But she says it's 2017 grand list.
Grand
And
list.
She cites that as her source. This one I have not double checked. Other ones where she cited the grand list, I did double check and it was the same that I had.
I guess I'll have to go back and ask, because clearly my property in 2017 wasn't 500,000 or more, so I don't get it.
Wouldn't yours be the second one in?
Maybe that's the,
I think yours is the.
yes, that's right. The
orange.
brown one is the Riverview, and that would be correct.
Yeah,
So mine would be the 120 to 160.
so maybe now.
That's
it's
correct.
more and you can pay more.
That's more correct. Yeah, I already see my tax bill.
Okay.
It's twice as much. So that does make sense, but some of it's probably off, so, so everyone knows, we did ask, when we get to finish finalizing the town plan, we would use the most accurate material available. So if there's 2018 is available to us at the time, because it's likely that it definitely won't get completed till sometime in 2020, that we would use 2018 or 2019, whatever is finalized. So there would be different charts at that time.
Yeah, so I just thought it was interesting information.
Right.
Yep. Very good.
And no decisions, just FYI.
Any
And the
other
next-
questions?
On how?
Seeing none, move along to economic development.
Okay, so this is another, just FYI, so I'm just gonna stand up so I can point to stuff. Okay, this is a graphic that is supposed to show property taxes and how they can be influenced. So the green dollar sign is property taxes. Property taxes, as you know, it's a calculation, grand list divided by the budget, just very simplistically. And the ways that we, as governments, can influence that, we can increase the grand list value, we can decrease the budget, right? Those are the basic choices, and we can do multiples of each. So just some examples of increasing, or ways that the municipality can contribute to the increase in the grand list. So the nuisance ordinance, right? We have, we crack down on buildings that aren't being maintained. That helps them, their value go up once they comply, but it really helps the neighborhood. I mean, we wouldn't be doing this if it didn't help the neighborhood, and that's how we define nuisances as buildings that are causing their neighbor's value to decrease. So that leads to the quality of housing, quality of roads, impacts directly homes. Adaptive reuse, so that's an example, 33 Bridge, that used to be a factory, is now being used, it has 2 glass floors in it, it has wool radio, it has now a art studio,
Mouse races.
lots of things, and room for more, and a training center. So that building has significantly improved in value as opposed to a vacant building. Quality of life, that's a little more touchy-feely thing, but it makes a difference. If people feel safe in a place, then property values go up. Tourism helps, particularly helps the businesses increase their values. And then as far as reducing the budget, I mean, you guys are all familiar with that and you're good at it. as staff, we try to also find ways to reduce expenses. The tax sale process, doing it in-house, will reduce our expenses. Sharing equipment, like sharing the roller with Westminster. We're gonna have benefit of that machine without having to buy a whole one. And then just other revenue sources. We'll be talking later with the select board about another source of revenue that we can actually get. I won't go into it, but stormwater utility is something that 5 towns in Vermont have done so far. And I think we should really look at it. So economic development. This is the traditional way that economic development is defined. It's federal government. You've all seen the USDA applications. You know that we've gotten a lot from the EPA. They cleaned up all the brown, not all of them, but a lot of our brown fields. Opportunity zones, new market tax credits, those are all federal programs. Gary spends a lot of time on those. It's a ton of paperwork. Now what we're doing is Gary and Shannon are actually doing a lot of the administration of those, things that we had to farm out to others, so we'll make money on their time, which is going to be a benefit. State of Vermont, you know about all their programs, so I won't go into all those. But Wyndham Regional Commission, I should give them a shout out because they're a pass-through for a lot of these programs. Then we have the top, this green oval, where you have Bellows Falls Area Development Corporation represented. Or no, I'm sorry, you're in blue, sorry.
Yep.
BFADC, who Peter's on that board, and Susan is also, and the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, BDCC. And both of those provide actual dollars, they provide training programs, they do direct investment into the community. So that's what those green arrows are for. That's supposed to represent dollars. Then we have the blue oval, which contributes not necessarily dollars, but they improve the coordination of the businesses. They sponsor events, which is the Downtown Development Alliance, now I should point it, and the Chamber of Commerce. So those lead into economic development, and then the products would be grand list increases, business relocation and jobs, and tourism. So that's the conventional, model, which is true today. But then there's some other things that I want to talk about, which are things that you might not think of as economic development, but they really have that aspect. So local services, police, fire, schools, recreation, those are critical to people moving here. Gary's had a couple inquiries of folks who wanted to buy homes recently, and they want to know, is the village safe? Which is a pretty fundamental question. So local services are just super critical. I can't emphasize that enough. And I just want to point to some of these products. The nice thing about this group of activities is not only do they eventually result in jobs and grand lists going up, but in the meantime, they help the people who are living here now. We get an immediate impact on these things. From local services, especially recreation, we'll get healthy kids, healthy adults and kids, which is super important to obviously, health is critical. We also drew a line from placemaking down to health. Placemaking is kind of a fun buzzword now in economic development, but it's real. And what it is people are trying to create what's already here. They're trying to create walkable neighborhoods. They're trying to create, we have train service that's really valuable. People want to live in historic, charming communities. They want trails, they want outdoor recreation, they want theater, arts. That is all here. I mean, we have what others want. And again, we directly benefit from that through health, quality of life, community tourism. Then we have the third blue blob, local zoning. That's really important to development. It can help it along or it can hinder it. And so we're looking at our zoning ordinances and just the way we do things. We're doing one-stop shopping so that when someone comes in for a permit, they can go to one person, they can find out what they need to do with wastewater, what they need to do with water, road permits, just all of the permits can be handled by one individual. so that it makes it a lot easier, and it's just a more professional operation. And then transportation utilities, we would do those anyway, but the better we do them, the better primed we are for economic development. So roads, bridges, buses, train again, water, sewer, broadband. We're really fortunate to have the capacity, and you guys did that before when you approved the improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. That's huge. We're lucky to be the place where First Light started. That was just luck, basically. But then the water, we're fortunate to have our water treatment system too. We have a really solid water treatment system, and now we're obviously working on the distribution system. So those things lead to like business relocation, because businesses really need the water, sewer, grand list increases, community pride. I mean, that's important. That's an outcome of this kind of stuff. That's important. You can't really put a number on it, but it's important and we can track it. So all that goes down to economic development too, after it improves daily life. So this is just trying to put up, there would be too many arrows if I tried to put all the things in. But this is just how you can look at economic development. It's the traditional economic development stuff that Gary is mostly focused on. But then there's other aspects too that lead to lower taxes and increased quality of life. So any
Questions? Any questions?
comments? Does it make any sense?
Yeah, it does. Nice job.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we had a number of foreign tourists and tourists here over the last few weeks because of foliage, and I sent a number of them down to look at the little park that we have, the Historical Society Park, and they went up to the labyrinth and wandered around. Unfortunately, I was trying to show them also the falls and the petroglyphs, and that was difficult because unfortunately, a AAA guide only says something about the Bellows Falls, as in the falls, and the petroglyphs in Hetty Green. And that it's very difficult to, they walk in and that's their questions, that's what they want right there. But we do have that beautiful park, and we had a lot of people that have been going to the play, the Secret Garden, and they're going in to have dinner before or going in for drinks afterwards at Wonder Bar or the other places, so that we've had some economic development from the theater.
Good. And we can definitely do more with advertising, like promoting what we have and communicating on the internet. That's on the list. We can definitely do more to advertise what we have.
Questions, comments? Seeing none. Fifth, Chamber of Commerce updates.
You want to skip that?
Debbie Collier.
I'll quickly hit a couple of points on each of our areas. We're down 3 board members. If anybody knows of anyone who would like to become a VIPTA board member, please send me information on people. We always need volunteers. And right now we're really working and planning on our upcoming VCRD community visit, something I've really wanted to do for a long time, to find out and to engage sectors of the community that we don't generally engage. And so I think this will be a wonderful thing, and I'm really looking forward to it. The planning for it is starting next week, and then the visit will actually be in the month of December. Our Shop Local program launched with our chili chowder cook-off, which was the Chamber's chili chowder cook-off, on Saturday, and I'll pass around Shop Local cards so you can start filling them up and spending your money locally. Last year, from the completed cards only, which is the only way I have to measure how we do, we could account for $390,000 that was spent locally through the Shop Local program, and just from the completed cards. So I think it's really working to promote people shopping locally, and it doesn't hurt that we have lots of good places to spend our dollars locally. And I'm happy to say that for a small town like this, it's pretty amazing that we have one ground floor vacancy, one street level vacancy, and I don't think many other towns can boast that. So that's a great thing. The promotion goes for 2 months. It ends on December 31st. We collect all the cards, and then we have a prize drawing. We have 56 businesses participating this year, and usually have about 70-some prizes. Again, to reward people for shopping local. Matt Saxton is going to have his home Christmas pop-up shop in the town hall space now once the Secret Garden vacates. He'll be there for the holidays. And Applegate Martial Arts has opened in the former Eastlake space on Westminster Street, so those are 2 new things that are happening in downtown. We continue to look at costs and ways to afford trash receptacles, light bollards, and ways to dispose of cigarette butts in downtown. We always have cigarette butts on our street. But I can't really blame people because there's nowhere to dispose of them. And just want to point out, and I'm sure all of you have noticed, the Rockingham Roaster building is looking really wonderful from all the work that they have done in reclaiming that building. With Shop Local, we have a series of events. Our Shop Local open house weekend is Friday, November 29th. It starts with Plaid Friday, we have Small Business Saturday, and we have a Sunday open house. And then Cider Monday, which kind of came out of people ordering online. Ladies' Night will be Friday night, December 13th. And there'll be lots of specials and promotions for women shoppers. And then we have not just men's night on Friday, December 20th. We think men tend to wait till the 11th hour to do their shopping sometimes, so we always have that as our last shopping event right before Christmas. So hope you will shop local, and maybe you have questions? Or not?
So you know, yes, thank you for giving us an update.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to the added item here, number 5, 66 Saxon Street up there, I guess. Debbie,
Right.
what you,
The purpose of this, of course, is that at our last meeting, we considered that would come to our next meeting, which wouldn't be until, is it November 16th? Is that what we figured it was? 15th, 16th, that we would want to place an order for, to order the owner to demolish the building. We have the opportunity tonight to to start the process of the order with the attorney and the manager now, and we can ratify it at our next meeting, which that's what I'm asking to do. If anyone would like to, for the trustees, would like to make a motion to that effect. That's what I'm looking for.
If you repeat that.
Okay, the motion is for the manager to work with the attorney to provide, to prepare the order for demolition that goes to the owner. You want to say it
How about,
differently?
I'd like to say just a little bit broader.
Sure.
Which is to authorize staff to begin the legal process to enforce the order. Because you want it enforced now.
We want, yes, but we're also talking about the demolition order. We haven't started that.
Right, well, this is, the order includes, well, it doesn't include demolition, but
No.
but to enforce the order that's been on the table for a year, that's the order that we need to enforce.
I think she wants to enforce a demolition order.
I thought that was
Yeah.
what we
Sounds
were
like
gonna
what
do.
she's
Well,
saying.
we don't have,
We haven't passed the demolition.
you have to pass the demolition.
No, that's what we could do tonight, ratify it in November, or.
I think you have to have findings.
What do you mean, well,
The
the order
order
picture's
that-
right there. What do you mean by enforcing the order? The order is the order, should have been enforced anyway.
No, it
No,
hasn't been enforced.
he hasn't.
I know.
Abided by it.
I know he hasn't, so we should have been enforcing it once he violated it, which he's done multiple times.
Right,
But I think what she's doing is you're seeking the court injunction ultimately, right?
right.
All right,
Right.
then that.
I just don't want to
that's-
tie it to that because there may be
No,
some
I
other
understand
legal
that.
thing.
I
I just want to
understand
say enforce the order through the legal process.
Okay.
Because that'll give the attorney maximum flexibility.
And then in November, we would go with the demolition order. Okay. All right, so that's the motion we're looking for.
I'll make that motion.
All right, need a second?
I'll second.
I know that Guy Tyler had something to say.
I don't think I do. This is trustees.
This is trustees only.
I'm a little confused.
I think we will have to ratify at our next meeting, but to get that, to actually go through the formal process legally.
When I was at your last meeting, I thought there was a $60,000 charge that would, if you guys, there's some fee for this.
We are
demolition.
fine.
So
We are
first you're
fine.
asking him to do what we told you, or he has to demolish it?
Yeah, the order would be for him to demolish, but that, not here. That'll have, that, now we have a motion to enforce the current order.
Okay.
We will do a demolition order next month. If the building doesn't demolish itself before then.
Right.
I mean, look at that hole right there. Every time it rains, it's
Yeah.
now pouring into the second story.
I have a question, perhaps. So Sunday, maybe it was Saturday, he was having a grand old yard sale out there with American flag, open sign, front door open. So the front door open to me with all those people. I'm confused with who's going in the building, how does he do that, who enforces it?
This action now is the only way we
We
can
can
enforce.
Enforce it.
Is it now, like condemned for, no one's supposed to be in that building?
Right,
correct.
that's correct.
Well,
So-
he can be in the building, but the public isn't supposed to be in the building.
That's correct.
Or I think his workers can be in the building.
Right. Those were not workers, and we've seen multiple sightings and reports of that, same thing.
Okay.
Okay, any trustee further conversation about the motion? Okay, all those in favor of the motions?
I need to give a second.
I'm sorry?
Stefan
Stefan seconded it. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? If none opposed, you have the motion. So we can move forward, thank you. And we will ratify it at our next meeting. All right, we're done with that, thank you.
Okay, other business, start with the trustee, Jonathan,
All set.
Jake,
All set.
All set?
Yep,
All set.
All set, Peter.
start on Stefan.
All set.
Ben?
I'm good. None.
Tom? Okay, how about the tax sale update, where are we with that?
We are in the process, I have a training on the 19th that I'm going to, for the entire process, to also visit a municipality that does it all in-house. But we are really, really, really busy.
What about the RFP? Now, the paper ad said that the RFP was supposed to be on the website, I haven't seen it yet.
We're gonna
Where are we
redo it.
applying to that? I mean, somebody tries to go on the website, I'm not gonna see it.
We're gonna
Do you
redo
have
the,
it?
we're gonna redo the RFP for title searches.
What about the little one downstairs? What do we stand with that?
We're waiting for it to be, we got the part, right?
We ordered the part and needed basically like a new motherboard. It came in, Bay State came right here to fix it and it did not work properly, so we are in the process. We're at their mercy.
In the meantime, we are not 88 and 1.
Yeah, we are. But
We
the-
are,
We
we
use the
don't-
lower theater.
But we're not
That's why we're not
using
using
it.
the lower
We are,
theater.
I know.
So we are ADA compliant.
Anybody else have anything? Okay, agenda items for the next joint board meeting, December 31st, which probably is gonna be bumped off.
I hope so.
New Year's Eve, anybody have any opposition to that? We'll have to set another date. Does anybody have anything for the agenda or currently? Hearing none, I guess we'll take it as it comes.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
we
probably
got
the
a couple
Depot Street Bridge will be on it, maybe Howard Block. So just,
Well, everybody get, no.
so do you want me to look for something in January or just wait till the next?
I would think that'd be the best thing. We'll go to something in January, first week or the end of January, probably be the best.
Okay.
Okay. I guess the next item is the executive session. We'll discuss about the union contracts and we'll need a motion to.
You need two, right?
You need two.
You and, you guys and
Yeah.
trustees.
Mr. Chairman, I move to find the premature general public knowledge of contracts will clearly place the municipality at a substantial disadvantage and negotiating strategies, IVSA 313A1.
Need a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay, now we need the second
Board
motion.
of Select Board doesn't make-
Wait, there's two motions,
And I
we
move
must
that
make a
the
vote.
board enter executive session to discuss contracts under provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statute and invite the manager, the finance director, and the attorney,
And the police chief, please.
By the police chief.
and the police chief to attend.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? No? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, we are ready. Your turn.
Select Board would like to make a motion. Two of them.
I move to find that premature general public knowledge of contracts will clearly place the municipality at a substantial disadvantage by negotiating strategies. 1 VSA 313A1.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor would say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Second motion, please.
I move that the board enter executive session to discuss contracts under provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes, and we will invite the manager.
Finance director, attorney, and police chief.
The attorney, the police department chief, and the finance manager.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those, any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed would say nay. Motion carried.